It means the Ministry's interfering at Hogwarts.
You're not going mad. You're just as sane as I am.
I must not tell lies.
You seem to be laboring under the delusion that I'm going to, what was the phrase? Come quietly.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Chapter 18, Dumbledore's Army. Elizabeth is back with us.
Hello, everyone.
And before we even get into the chapter, there is a whole bunch of shout-outs. We have not been doing shout-outs very much recently, and
someone's been slacking.
I know, that's my bad, and now I have to shout them all out. It's going to take a minute. So, first shout-out comes for Mabel, who left a comment on our Order of the Phoenix Chapter 14, Percy and Padfoot. Mabel says, quote, "Been dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety lately, especially at nighttime, and this podcast has been helping me be able to sleep, even though I end up laughing and arguing with you all while trying to sleep."
That's awesome. I'm sorry we're keeping you from your sleep. Sleep is so important.
I mean, I'm going to speak for myself here. I know that vibe of trying to get to sleep at night, having some anxiety, some stress hits you, and you need a little something to help get you through that. And for me, Harry Potter has been that. Mm-hmm. I would go back and I would read Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm. It's a comfort thing.
It is a comfort thing. So I am very happy that we can provide a little bit of respite from all of that while talking Harry Potter.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening, and I'm glad we can make you laugh. And I'm glad you want to argue with us a little bit. That's fine, too.
I feel like that's one of your main goals, is just, like, get people to argue with you.
There's nothing wrong in differing opinions. Mm-hmm. That's totally cool. Mm-hmm. I think it's actually really awesome that we have differing opinions, even though we're reading the same text.
Yeah, otherwise this would be super boring.
It would be super boring. Anyway.
Mabel wouldn't want to listen at all.
No, probably not. Moving on, we got Anna Jane, who left a comment on our Sorcerer's Stone Chapter 5 Diagon Alley episode. And she says, "It's awesome. I'm reading this at school, so I listen to this while I work out."
Ooh, reading it at school, like for class, like your English class? Because, I'm an English teacher, so if that's it, I highly approve.
Maybe she's just reading it in her downtime.
Then I approve even more.
Between classes. But I'm happy that you're listening to this while you're working out. I feel like that's a really good use of a podcast. I feel like that's something a lot of people do, is listen to podcasts while they work out. So that's pretty awesome. Thank you again for listening. We have Elizabeth with an S.
Oh, see, I spell mine with a Z.
So we know it's not you then. Also left a comment on the Sorcerer's Stone Chapter 5. "Love Harry Potter? Love this."
No.
Very nice.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much for the comment. We really appreciate it. We got Gracie May, who left a comment on our Order of the Phoenix Chapter 16 In the Hog's Head episode. And she commented on the debate that Anna and I were having. Not the debate so much, but Anna's commentary about Zachariah Smith. She goes, Gracie says, "I hated Zacharias terribly in this. Does Umbridge have to be in Harry Potter? Because I hate her." Smiley face. Thank you so much, Potterheads. Love you. Exclamation point, smiley face. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I thought your guys' Zachariah Smith commentary was pretty fun.
I was really happy. First of all, it's very Anna to bring up a whole philosophical conversation on what I called a barely fringe tertiary character in the whole thing.
I approve.
Loved it. This is probably a good opportunity. On that episode, In the Hog's Head, we put on a poll and essentially gauging feelings on Zachariah Smith. And right now, the poll has it at 64% of people think he's a massive jerk. 36% of people think he's a little misunderstood, like Anna thought during that episode.
Yeah, I think I voted misunderstood because Anna convinced me. So
Anna made a very strong argument for it.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I kind of like her take on it.
Yeah.
So
listen to the episode if you haven't yet.
It's a really interesting take that Anna has. Go back and listen to it. Thank you, Gracie, for that comment and kind of weighing in on your 2 cents on that poll. We appreciate it. Next comment is also from the In the Hogshead chapter, and it's from The Big Bambino. Love the name. So he says, well, it's taken about 5 months, but I finally caught up on the podcast.
Hey, congratulations.
He says he's been enjoying it a ton.
Good.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to catch up on the podcast. It took you 5 months. It's unbelievable that we've been doing this for a while now.
It's unbelievable that we've been doing it for a month, let alone how many years now.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So thank you very much for putting in the time and the effort to actually catch up on the podcast. We very much appreciate it. It kind of puts a lot of the hard work that we put into this.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
Makes it worth
to catch up.
Yeah. I'm saving this last one for the end because Elizabeth has to comment on it. We have a comment from Alice, who left a comment on our Sorcerer's Stone Chapter 17, The Man with Two Faces episode. She goes, Elizabeth, with a lot of ha-ha-has. I had the same thoughts about Voldy/Quirrell. I need these details in my life. In love with this podcast. I live near where Diagon Alley was based in
cool.
Devon. It's so lovely.
Good.
So,
I'm glad there's someone else who also wants all those details because I still want to know how the heck Voldemort being in the back of Quirrell's head, how did that work on a daily basis? Someone please film that for me.
Just slept and put the head to the side. So both have like comfort sleeping arrangements. I don't know.
What if one snores and the other is like, I can't sleep?
Well, there's a lot of controversy because if you go off the movie depiction of it,
yeah,
I believe that Voldy has a nose, like has an actual nose, so he could maybe actually snore. So maybe it's Voldy that's snoring during the whole thing. Or maybe he's just up the entire night.
That's so awful. You need sleep.
Not if you're a possessed wisp of a ghost or whatever he was.
What a horrible existence if you can't have any sleep.
No, what a horrible existence for Quirrell, because he's probably up being like, hey, you up?
Imagine how awkward it'd be the first time.
Do you want to talk about Harry Potter?
That boy! I must kill that boy! Just imagine how awkward that would have been the first time that he possessed him and be like, hey, can you hear me? Can you hear my thoughts? Can you see me?
Can you hear me now? Like what was that? The Verizon commercial?
Can you hear me now? Not sponsored by Verizon.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm so glad somebody else also agrees that we need answers.
Thank you very much, Alice, for listening and for putting in your 2 cents on The Man with Two Faces. Elizabeth clearly enjoyed that comment. With that, almost
get to the chapter.
Yeah, right. We've gotten through a lot of the shout outs, but let's get to the chapter. I'll just run it down really quick. We have a scene in Charms class with the trio. We have some Quidditch practice, I guess, in some inclement weather.
Call it that, yeah.
And I think you had a note. Angelina Johnson has just had a terrible run of luck as the Quidditch captain here. We also get a little bit of some Harry's scar background. Mm-hmm. We also get Dobby. Dobby makes an appearance in this chapter.
Yay!
We get a lot of, and we get the first practice of what is to be known as the DA.
Dumbledore's Army.
Stunner, it's the chapter title.
Yeah.
So, going back to the Charms class real quick. Really, we start off the chapter with them acknowledging, like, what's the best place for a really covert conversation? Charms. Everybody's moving, everybody's talking, there's a bunch of sound. Yeah. No one's really paying attention to any one thing.
They said the danger of being overheard was very slight.
You'd think if they know this fact, they might have tried to have that meeting in the Three Broomsticks instead of in the Hogshead.
It's so funny because it's like, obviously Hermione was trying to think logically behind the meeting in the Hogshead and be like, okay, well, we don't want people to see what we're doing and to overhear us and whatever. It's like, there's nobody there, so of course they're going to hear everything that you said. There was, 28 of you? 28 teenagers in a really tiny pub that does not usually see people. It's going to draw some attention.
I'm jumping ahead here a little bit in the chapter, but do you think Sirius pointing out, like, hey, Hermione, that was a great thought, except you still have a lot to learn, kid. Do you think that and Sirius kind of like, not really scolding, because to anybody else that's not really a scolding, but to Hermione that's like, an
I think
offensive
it wasn't so much
statement.
a scolding as like,
It wasn't.
a realization that like I really wasn't thinking as smartly as I
Well, that's
should
what I'm
have
saying.
been.
It wasn't a scolding.
Mm-hmm.
To Hermione, however, when you're saying, oh, you still have a lot to learn, kid, that could be like a deep offense to Hermione.
I don't think she'd take it as a deep offense. I think she'd take it as a deep failure on her part, and like she should have known better. And the fact that she didn't is like, oh shoot.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because later in the chapter, she has this like long pause where she's staring blankly out at nothing. And Harry and Ron are like, what are you doing?
I love when she was like, do you think, yeah, maybe, I don't know. And Ron just had this quote that just cracked me up. He said, well, that clears that up. It would have been really annoying if you hadn't explained yourself properly. That sarcasm from Ron is just perfection.
That's my kind of sarcasm.
I love it.
Very much my kind of sense of sarcasm. But my point is with the whole Sirius comment is she comes out of that kind of thinking state and says, maybe we shouldn't be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we shouldn't be doing this defense class. And they're like, what? This was your idea. And then she goes, yeah, but Sirius seemed really for it. And he's got some bad judgment. So maybe I made a mistake.
Which I have some qualms about because, yes, she's saying he's reckless, which he is. I mean, there are some things that he's suggested so far in the book that would probably not be the best idea.
Mostly involving him, though.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, the poor man is cooped up in his house. All last year, he had really good advice that they would always take.
Which Harry points out.
Yeah, and like this year, it's just the fact that he...
And,
you know, he wants to be involved, and he hasn't been.
Ron at some point says, Hermione, Sirius isn't an idiot.
Right.
And he's not. He's experienced. He's been there before. Yes, he does have a reckless streak. But usually he thinks for Harry and tries to think for Harry and protect him in a way.
Mm.
It's different than what Molly Weasley might suggest and that take, which is what Ron says.
Right.
Like, hey, you're sounding a lot like my mom, which Hermione I don't think takes very well. Even though she bites her lip, but I think it's just interesting that Sirius kind of admonishes her a little bit in one of the previous chapters, and now she's coming back and being like, I'm not really sure that Sirius is really thinking very strategically or very logically here.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a little like back and forth between Sirius and Hermione of, can't believe he insulted me like that. Fine, I'm gonna.
I don't know about that much, but I do think we see several times in this chapter where she's starting to second guess herself, and it's only where there's a source that she very much fully trusts the judgment of, aka Dumbledore,
mm-hmm.
that she's like, okay, yeah, we should do this.
I don't think it's fair for Hermione, getting back to the actual point. Yeah, I don't think it's fair for Hermione to say this about Sirius because she's saying that he's reckless.
Mm-hmm.
Has she taken notes on what the three of them have done in their 4.5 years? Not even 4.5, 4 years?
Like to some degree, Hermione is still that first year girl who was like, oh, we can't break the rules. And every now and then it pops up.
She's
and
throwing
like...
stones in glass houses is what she's doing. Like, what are you doing?
I mean, a really, really, really big rule has now been made of no more groups of this size, right? So this is a big risk, but I still think it's a good one.
Yeah, I disagree with Hermione fundamentally here, and I'll also disagree with Hermione at other points in this chapter, but we'll get there too.
Going back though, let's go back to charms.
What other charms thoughts do you have?
The Silencio charm.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want that. I kind of would like
You want to silence me?
No, oh, well, sometimes maybe,
I
but
bet.
no, I would love to use it on some of my classes. Let me just say, those freshmen who screech very, very loudly, kind of like those ravens and the frogs that they were trying to silence.
Those poor animals, though. They have been subjected to so much animal abuse.
Honestly, I'm a little surprised that Flitwick uses ravens, because ravens and like crows, I think those kind of birds, like they have a very good memory for people, and if you befriend them, they will bring you presents, which is why I think it'd be super fun to have a raven as a little pet. Also because of Edgar Allan Poe, but that's a different story. But if you are mean to them, they remember you and they teach each other like your face, and you will be like traumatized by these birds. So the fact that they're silencing them, I feel like Flitwick has set them up to have some bird enemies.
I'm assuming she's using a raven just because it's not inherently a magical animal, but it's tied
witchy.
to magic a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I still am like, you could use a parrot. That'd be easier.
Guys, Flitwick just returned from the Bahamas. He's brought...
That's serious, where he got those big tropical birds that he used to send letters with. Silence some of them. Don't silence the raven. You gotta quote the raven.
Nevermore.
Yeah.
No. My whole thing was Harry almost squished a frog to death.
Yeah.
Like, these poor animals. How does Hagrid deal with all of this? Like, does Hagrid just
know.
Cool with it all, or he seems to me like he would be the PETA version of teachers in this school.
Or at least the magical creatures. These are regular animals, but I guess that gets into a whole can of worms of like, if these animals can be aware of the magical world, does that make them extra special?
Well, she put in a description of like the frog was trying to get away, and then Harry was like, Accio, and brought the frog, quote, gloomily back to his hand. So is the frog like
these stupid
got me.
Witches and wizards with their
Stupid
wands
magic.
and magic. I just want to go to a swamp.
Anyway. So.
But yeah, there's the chaos of charms.
We do also get Hermione giving us a little small lesson on wand work. And the idea that, Ron, you can't just like wave your wand for the spell. You need to have a specific wand movement to execute the spell effectively.
Which you would think by 5th year he would have realized by now.
I don't think he's really paying attention and trying.
True.
Quite honestly.
Yeah, because didn't he start to inflate his frog?
Because he's like waving the wand and yeah.
That definitely makes me think of that scene in Shrek when they make balloon animals out of the animals. That frog that just gets like, whoop.
So to your point, Hermione's like, fine, we'll switch animals, and then because Ron points out like, well, ravens are harder to silence than frogs.
Yeah, and she shuts that raven up very quickly.
Yeah.
The frog, not so much.
Anyway, speaking of shutting things up, Peeves gets a mention.
I love mentions of Peeves, especially scenes like this where it's like there's obviously something that we, the readers, are supposed to be focusing on, but this is background stuff that you could just imagine the chaos that he's doing.
Here's the thing, Elizabeth. I know you enjoy Peeves as a reader of Harry Potter. If you were a professor at Hogwarts...
Oh, he'd drive me nuts.
He would drive you nuts.
Which I was kind of wondering about, because, okay, so he was, like, shooting ink pellets at various kids, and it seemed like most of them were kind of ignoring him, but poor Katie Bell was, like, throwing things at him, and then he emptied an entire ink bottle over her head, which makes me wonder if it'd be better to ignore him or to confront him, because I feel like on the one hand, if you're ignoring him, he's going to continue to do it to see if he can get a rise out of you, but if you confront him, then he's gotten that rise, and it's going to escalate to the point of getting ink on your head.
You have to confront him, but you have to confront him in a definitive way. For example, remember what Lupin did when Peeves showed up?
Oh, yeah, when he shoved the gum up his nose.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you have to be like, all right, if you're going to do this to me, I'm going to come right back at you.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, we never get a Peeves interrupting Lupin's class ever again, do we? So
Do you think if Peeves could see a Bogart, would it be Lupin?
I don't think so.
With gum just shoved.
It might be McGonagall, because McGonagall has
I
some
feel like
control over him.
McGonagall and Lupin have not Lupin. McGonagall and Peeves have a very special.
Yes, stay away.
relationship.
Don't mess with McGonagall.
Yeah.
That's the relationship.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we get to Quidditch practice,
Yes.
which I know is your favorite thing in the world to talk about.
I don't mind the practices. I feel like I enjoy them more than the meets, maybe.
As both an athlete and an athletic trainer,
That kills your soul.
I cannot. No, it's just for the life of me, I cannot understand why they are doing practice in these conditions. And I know Angelina Johnson says, "Oh, we'll probably be playing Slytherin in similar conditions." Well, you shouldn't be playing them in similar conditions anyway. Just try to get. And I get we're talking about Northern Scotland, and there's probably weather issues most of the year.
Haven't they been unable to practice for a week?
Well, yeah, because it's been banned. She just
Right.
got clearance.
So far it's been okay. You had a week of no practices, and there was one practice where everyone was there, but the Slytherins were also there mocking them. And then every other practice Harry hasn't been able to be at.
Yeah.
So I feel like she's probably thinking, okay, I finally have the whole team together. Let's actually practice. But not everyone's in it, especially Fred and George. They have other things to be worrying about on their body right now.
Yeah, they were thinking about using. Ron wanted some puking pastule or some one of their
Get me out of practice.
snack boxes to get them out of practice.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Wait, maybe fever fudge." And they're like, "Well, fever fudge works in that it will get your temperature up,
Mm-hmm.
but there's some side effects that we haven't really figured out just yet.
Mm-hmm.
There's boils."
Not in fun places.
Yeah, and Ron is like, "What are you talking about? I don't see any boils." And they're like, "Yeah, they're not popping up in places we generally show in public." And it's like, oh.
That also does make me like, that is interesting to think of all the side effects they've been having that they haven't necessarily been telling people about. Because I would think if the fever gets raised successfully, like, is it? I mean, how do they control that, right? Like, couldn't it just go up, 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 up?
Correct.
So, like...
And we know they've been experimenting with fairly dangerous things, like
Yeah.
actual venom from
Yeah.
dark magic-based creatures. And it's like, if you're
The fact
messing
they
this up,
haven't died yet is astounding.
it's a miracle, honestly.
Yeah.
But anyway. So they decide on using an impervious spell to try to keep the rain, fog, and any other elements out of their face and eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is that legal? Can they be doing that? Like for a match or anything like that? Or is that considered a, quote, performance-enhancing spell?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they definitely did that for Harry's glasses, so they didn't make a big scene out of it. But I could see the Slytherins as being like, nope, can't do it.
There
we
has
should
to-
win automatically.
There has to be some limit on what magic you're allowed to do for Quidditch.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you were to suddenly start doing charms on yourself or take potions or whatever.
You could put charms on your broom. You could put charms on the actual equipment of the Quidditch game as long as you do it sneakily
Or
enough.
like jinx other people's brooms and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there has to be a limit, because then it becomes not so much a Quidditch sport competition. Then it just becomes a free-for-all.
I imagine just for this practice, that's what they're going for. But I just, like you said, I feel so bad for Angelina because, I mean, she's had her seeker out for the vast majority of the season so far. The stupid Umbridge decided to ban sports for a week, and she had to go above her head to get permission to practice. I mean, she went to McGonagall went to Dumbledore.
Presumably.
And it was like, okay, yes, you can do it. And then she had Katie was bleeding that one time, and now the weather's god awful, and the Slytherins are being obnoxious, and she's got a keeper who doesn't have the confidence. It's just like, I wonder how Wood would have done under these circumstances. I really don't feel like he'd do
He would
much
have been
better than her.
stressed. He would have been very, very stressed out.
Yeah. Imagine how he would have reacted to Harry's detentions.
He would have kicked him off the team. He would have kicked him off the team.
Well, I don't know if he'd find someone better than Harry.
No, but he'd still kick him off the team. He'd be like, "Are you kidding me right now? You're not playing anyway." Anyway. So, speaking of stressed, Harry has a stressful moment in the locker room after the practice. He has his scar hurting again. Everybody questions it. He's like, I just poked myself in the eye as I was drying off. Okay. Ron stays behind.
Ron knows better.
And Harry lets him in on some interesting information that he can feel what Voldy is feeling.
It's like his scar is Voldemort's mood ring.
So, in this particular instance, he said, oh, he's upset. He's very angry.
He said he wants something done and it's not happening fast enough.
And then when it hurt with Umbridge, he said, thinking back, Voldemort was pleased. He was happy.
Yeah, really pleased.
So,
and the night before we came back to Hogwarts, he was furious.
Yeah. Harry refuses to inform Albus of this because Harry says, well, Dumbledore already knows that it's happening. So I don't have to tell him. That's just repeating things, wasting time. Ron is like, no, I really think he would want to know about this.
Well, especially since this is like this is taking it up a notch. Like, yes, he knows you've been feeling your scar hurting, but his mouth almost spoke Voldemort's feelings without even realizing he knew what they were.
And don't you think Dumbledore would want to, at the very least, know? Dumbledore would want to know if Voldy is happy or angry given the situation, given the moment.
Yeah.
That could be useful intel for the Order.
Yeah.
To base on like, oh, Voldemort failed getting this, or oh, Voldemort's happy. That's not good for us.
Right. You know what that's about. Yeah.
What's coming.
Yeah.
It's something that Dumbledore should be aware of, and I think Ron is just flat right about this.
And if even Ron is like, you need to tell Dumbledore, like, you should probably
and
tell Dumbledore.
Harry's glad he didn't run into Hermione in the Gryffindor Tower because he didn't want to hear the same thing from her.
Yeah, she'd lecture
so
even harder.
So two people are pretty certain about, hey, you should probably do this. You should probably do it.
I wonder at what point some of the blame almost goes on Ron and Hermione because they haven't pushed even further. Like, in general, I fully believe it's on Harry to say it.
Well, they're petrified he's going to snap at them again.
True.
Because even when Hermione's starting to speak about Sirius, there's a moment where Harry can tell she's measuring her words carefully.
Well, I don't think that's because she thinks Harry's going to snap on her. I think that's just because she wants to make sure that she is wording it correctly.
I think it's both. I think she knows she's speaking on Sirius, and she knows Harry feels a certain way about Sirius.
Yeah.
So she can't just let it fly. She's got to fluff the words a little bit. But obviously he can't go to Sirius like he normally would because his mail's getting watched. Umbridge almost caught him in the flu powder in the fireplace. And honestly, I don't think Harry wants to hear a third person say, hey, go
talk to Dumbledore.
Go talk to Dumbledore about this. But anyway, so we get to Harry in the Gryffindor common room, who he just legs and legs and legs in doing his homework.
Yeah, he was looking up confusing and befuddlement draughts, where the wizard is desirous of producing hot-headedness and recklessness.
Yep.
Which I don't understand why you would want that.
It doesn't have to be for yourself.
Even still.
You can give it to someone else if you're looking for a desired effect.
I don't want to deal with anyone who's hot-headed and reckless.
If you're looking for a certain reaction, yeah. If you want them off their game and you on yours, sure.
Think that would be allowed in Quidditch?
No. My delay was, I don't know that that's the circumstance that I'd want. Like, if there was some press briefing or something like that, or some interview, and you could slip it, and then they're like a little off their game that way.
And then you get the job instead.
Or you get a quote out of them that they don't necessarily mean to say in public for the
Maybe.
profit or something like that. I don't know.
It just fascinates me, some of the stuff that they have to study. And like, what's the usage? What scenarios would you need that?
So after Harry has long forgotten to do his homework and just not forgotten, but has long neglected to do his homework, Dobby appears and wakes him up with Hedwig. And Hedwig is healed and refreshed and ready to return to her normal owl activities.
Which is great. Dobby is quite a sight, though. He has so many hats on and so many scars. And it comes out that he has been taking every bit of clothing that Hermione has left in the Gryffindor Tower.
This is the second part that I disagree with Hermione in this chapter, is I'm not a fan of her leaving these, and this is the exact reason why, because Dobby lets us know that they find these quote-unquote gifts insulting.
And now Dobby has to clean the entire Gryffindor tower by himself, which I'm sure Hermione wouldn't enjoy,
because they've been so offended by this that they've given up working here. Which is another thing altogether. Like, they want to do the work, so the fact that they've stopped working here,
this says a lot.
Says a lot. They are deeply offended by this, which this is one thing that I wish Hermione could see the other side of the coin on, and she flat out refuses to hear anything to the contrary.
I still think they could pick up the clothes. We had this discussion before. I forget which chapter it was. They still could pick them up because they're not being gifted them, really. They're just it's there, the same way.
I think it's the whole idea of it.
But yeah, I agree. I think this is insulting. Why are you putting these clothes everywhere when you know that this is a thing that would free me, and I don't want that?
And they just seem to have a negative opinion of just clothes in general.
Yeah.
They don't like them.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's because of what they symbolize. And if they're particularly happy where they are working, working at Hogwarts is probably not the worst. Dobby worked in a
very,
horrible
very
environment.
Toxic. Yeah. Yep.
So, maybe pick and choose your battles a little bit better, Hermione. But anyway.
But Dobby, once again, comes in clutch with some great information. Last time we saw him come in clutch was with the Triwizard Tournament.
Yeah, that was... my opinions on that second task abomination of...
thank you, Dobby.
Harry had his hand held all the way to the... Whatever. Not going to go down that rant again. But Dobby does come in clutch. He says, if there's anything Harry Potter needs, just let me know. And Harry's about to go up to his dorm, and then he's like, actually, do you know of any place we can practice and no one can find us? And he's expecting Dobby to be like, oh, man, that's a hard ask. I don't know that I can get you that. And instead, Dobby's like, oh, I got just a place.
Which, before we talk about the place, I will say, and I know the internet has pointed this out too. I didn't put this in my notes. It's just coming to me now. You'd think he'd think about the Chamber of Secrets. It's a very secret place where only he can really get to, and he's been inside before. We know it's safe now. We know there's plenty of room down there to do all sorts of spells and whatnot. The biggest challenge would be sneaking people in and out of the bathroom, but
only him, the only staff members that would know would probably be Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Snape. Assume. There's
no way that Umbridge would be aware. It'd just be like, oh, people are sneaking into the bathroom, okay, and then they're not coming out. I don't know how often she's paying attention to the bathroom, so it could be a perfect place to do it, and he doesn't think of it.
There's some other connotations involving the Chamber of Secrets. It's a place of dark magic.
I know, but it's reclaim it. Put it to good use.
I don't know that Dumbledore would be particularly thrilled with now it would be a power play for Harry being like, oh, you don't believe I did all this stuff? Let me take you down to the Chamber of Secrets. Boom.
I could see it as being traumatizing for Ginny, and maybe to a degree Ron. But
Dumbledore, I don't think, would be super hyped about that as a location either. I think he wants to put that piece of Hogwarts history behind.
I don't know if Dumbledore would really have an opinion one way or the other, but it's just always one of those, like, you're looking for a big, large, secret place to practice. You already know of one.
Also,
Harry.
for the record, just assuming, there's also a decomposing basilisk down there.
I'm sure Hermione knows some like perfume spell.
Just throwing that out there.
It's just like one of those examples of where Harry, he learned something and then he seems to immediately forget it. Like I always think about when he does the Accio for summoning his broom and then he's stuck in the stairs in Goblet of Fire and the mat falls and the egg falls. It's like, dude, you have your wand. Just say the stupid spell and it will fly back to you and problem solved.
I do think Harry should at least think of the Chamber of Secrets as an option. That's probably true. I don't know that they should.
Well, he's lucky because this room is significantly
It's
better.
perfect. So Dobby refers to it as the come and go room, but generally it's referred to as the room of requirement.
I love the room of requirement.
So it technically doesn't always exist per se.
Mm-hmm.
It literally comes and goes, and it comes and goes at the whim of whatever the person that happens to come by it needs at that time.
It has some kind of specific rules though, so you have to walk past it 3 times and you have to be thinking about what you want.
I'm not 100% sure about that. Walking by it 3 times, I get that would eliminate a lot of random people just coming across it. But at the same time, are you telling me like Fred and George got to this place, 7th floor, across from Barnabas the Barmy, being clubbed by trolls for teaching them ballet?
I could see...
Are you telling me that Fred and George got to that spot and just ran back and forth 3 times away from Filch?
What if, like, Filch is coming one way and then Peeves is coming from another and then Mrs. Norris turns the corner and it's like, oh shoot, which way do we go? Almost like a Scooby-Doo kind of thing.
I find it very hard to believe that it's a firm go back and forth 3 times. But whatever.
Either way, the room is fantastic and I want one.
It's perfect. Yeah. It's equipped with whatever that user desires. Mm-hmm. So Dumbledore, Harry mentions that Dumbledore in Goblet of Fire at the Yule Ball mentioned like...
He wanted a bathroom.
Yeah, I really just needed a bathroom. So it magically appeared and there were, chamber pots. It's great.
Dobby said Filch has found like cleaning supplies in it before whenever he's
Well, he also says he himself has used it to store Winky to get over her hangovers.
Yeah.
Elf-sized bed, some tonic, some cures.
Yeah. Aww.
Yeah. So, anyway, Harry finds out the exact location and the instructions on how to get in there, which we mentioned. Mm-hmm. And then we have the first practice. So, there's a lot going on in this practice, but since we have a teacher here on the podcast today as a guest, Harry...
I feel like you always have me on through these chapters for that very reason.
Harry now experiences what it's like to be a professor at Hogwarts, in a sense.
Oh, gosh.
And in one sense, he has to deal with Hermione. Hermione raising her hand constantly throughout his opening introductory speech.
Okay. Honestly, though, I am all for Hermione doing that. And I think it's just because she immediately establishes for him a sense of authority. And I mean, like, literally raising your hand to someone and being like, can I ask a question? Automatically just puts you as, like, the submissive to them. So I think that was really great that she did it. I think it's great she gave the title for the group.
I just like the imaging of...
Mr. Potter?
Yeah,
can I ask a question?
Well, just like Harry being like, okay, guys, trying to get into his flow and his rhythm, trying to get used to leading a class, and he gets constantly interrupted by...
Well, that is very realistic. And also realistic, he said, like, he started to explain to the first people that came in, like, what this room is and how he figured it out. And then before he could even finish telling them about it, more people came in asking, and he had to start all over again. And if that is not true to teaching, I don't know what is.
Before we get too far away from it, a lot of people would yell at me if I didn't point this out and let's give Dobby his full credit here.
Oh yeah, this came through.
Because he is just so unfortunately left out of most of the Harry Potter movies. And he's egregiously left out of the Order of the Phoenix movie when he's such a pivotal plot point.
Is he not in it at all? I don't remember.
He's not in that movie at all.
At all?
Not at all. Not once.
What?
He's not even mentioned. I think it was Neville in the movie who found the Room of Requirement.
Oh my gosh.
So
I still hate these movies.
let's give Dobby his props here, because this is a pivotal plot point, finding the Room of Requirement to give these kids a place to practice safely away from Umbridge.
Yeah, I mean, like, this room is fantastic because I think Ron pointed out there's the pillows that they can use for stunning. Hermione immediately pulls a book off the shelf because there's so many books that Umbridge would flip her lid on if she saw that they were looking at them. And there's the dark magic detectors that Harry points out when he needs a whistle so that people can listen to him because he doesn't have his teacher voice just yet. That just pops up. It's so cool to me that this stuff just appears. And it also makes me question how much, like, you could ask the room to provide and then take from it. Like, if you wanted to become rich, could you ask for $1 million and then it provides? Or when I read this, I always think about those books and, like, I mean, the students have to buy all their books. Imagine if they had asked the room for all the Lockhart books. The Weasleys would be like, dang, I don't have to spend a cent.
I don't know. I'm sure there's a limit to that. And Hermione sits down and reads that book right there. I don't know if she'd be able to take it away from the room. We don't really ever get that answer. So I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a limit to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we do get the official name. And there's a couple of names that come up previously. Angelina Johnson, I think, gives the first option, which is honestly not a bad first option. The Anti-Umbridge League. Really, the problem there isn't so much the name, it's the abbreviation. It'd be the AUL, which just doesn't roll at all. That's really the
Also, I feel like if you
point.
say Umbridge, her ears are going to perk up a little bit just to hear what's going on with her name.
Then you get the Ministry of Magic Are Morons group.
I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not wrong, but Fred, my man, you can do better.
What would you have said?
I'm sorry. That is not the most creative. You have a person as creative and inventive as Fred, who's coming up with these snack boxes. And the best he can do is the Ministry of Magic Are Morons.
So what would you have
You're
done?
much more clever than that. I'm not Fred. I'm just saying. Fred can do better. He can do better. So we get the DA name comes from Cho.
Right.
Which I don't think many people actually remember or give her credit for at all.
Well, yeah, because the abbreviation doesn't stay the same. But
everybody refers to it as the DA.
Right.
Everybody refers to it as the DA.
She calls it the Defense Association?
The Defense Association.
Right.
The DA for short.
Mm-hmm.
And Ginny's like, I like the DA, but let's switch it to Dumbledore's Army.
Which is fantastic, poking at the Ministry.
Yeah. So, which... they're trying to find a name that's obvious, but also not obvious. And I feel like this is still on the obvious bit because you're doing it specifically because the Ministry is fearful of it. So if the Ministry, Umbridge, ever finds out about this, that's a problem.
Like, what if, I mean, they take Defense Against the Dark Arts. DA. Wouldn't just DA be Dark Arts? Couldn't that
the Dark Arts Club?
Yeah, like we're the Dark Arts Club, and like that would maybe catch my attention. Be like, what are they doing?
I don't know that the Ministry would like that either. The Ministry would not like any of this.
Maybe Umbridge would approve of it more, though. She seems pretty dark.
Anyway, so Harry decides that the first spell up on his list of things to teach these students is Expelliarmus. Which I will again point out to Anna's chagrin that Harry learns from Severus Snape.
And Zachariah Smith is immediately like, oh, come on. This is so stupid.
Okay, in fairness, I do see where Zacharias is coming with this. Because, admittedly, a disarming spell against potentially the greatest dark wizard of all time. Come on, man. I'll give him a break on that.
I won't give him as much of a break as you will, because trust that your teacher knows what they're doing, and there's a reason why we're starting with the foundation stuff. Because 5 seconds later, when we're practicing it, clearly we needed to practice this. There were some lacking skills.
Well, I do like that. I do like the idea that Harry, when this is all going on, recognizes, quote, shoddy spell work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, me and Anna and everybody on this podcast, Julie has been a very anti Harry Potter, especially in this book. But Anna's a very fervent defender of Harry. And I feel like we've discussed, Harry's talented at this. Oh, he's being an idiot here or whatever. I think this little snippet that's a throwaway line meant to be like, oh, here's a Harry is a teacher moment, is a real credit to Harry, that he could stand back there and be like, guys, we're better than this.
Yeah.
Like, this is some pretty bad spell work. Harry is able to intake, analyze, and assess other people's spells. And this is, I think, a big step for him, because think about it. He's done 4 and a quarter
if that
of years at Hogwarts now. He's seen a lot of magic. And he's probably thought nothing of it. Defense against the dark arts and charms and whatever. And he's been a part of it sometimes. And it's never really registered with him. And now he's in this quote unquote leadership, not quote unquote. He's in this leadership position, and he's looking around at his peers and going, this isn't good enough. We need to be better.
Well, also, I think, if you, again, want to step into a classroom, if you give any type of like group assignment or partner practice or whatever, the way that this group devolves is so realistic. He said how like the twins were messing with Zacharias by making like stuff happen every time he opened his mouth. His wand would go, even though he wasn't saying anything, and it was like annoying him. You're always gonna have the kids like poking at each other or throwing things at each other, or just messing with each other. And then when they get caught, they're like, sorry, Harry, which was adorable. And then there's like, spells are hitting things on the wall. They're not going where they're supposed to. It's just a mess. There's a reason why he needed a whistle.
Well, yeah. So Harry ends up pairing up with Neville, and he takes a moment to assess what the class is actually doing. And Neville actually is able to disarm Harry.
And he's so proud, too. He's like, this is the first time I was ever able to do it.
It's a good teaching moment from Harry, because he doesn't point out the fact that, in real life situations, your opponent's probably not going to be distracted and staring off in a different direction.
With their arm, like, just limply at their side.
He gives encouragement. He's like, hey, good job. That's awesome. Like, keep it up.
And it's encouraging for Harry, because Neville was so excited about that.
Yeah. So, like you said, we get Fred and George constantly disarming Zacharias from behind his back.
Which, to be fair, is hilarious. But, like, you can't laugh at it because you're the teacher.
Well, also, it's like, great. Fred and George are good at disarming spells. Awesome. Can we let Michael Corner, or not Michael Corner, can we get
give them a chance.
Anthony Goldstein and Zacharias
they got
a chance to actually practice? But yeah, we get this awesome breakdown of the group that I am going to read for you right here, if I could find the page. So we get this awesome breakdown of the group, and I'll just read the passage to you here. Harry walked around the other pairs, trying to correct those who were doing the spell wrong. Ginny was teamed with Michael Corner. She was doing very well, whereas Michael was either very bad or just unwilling to jinx her. Ernie Macmillan was flourishing his wand unnecessarily, giving his partner time to get in under his guard. The Creevy brothers were enthusiastic, but erratic, and mainly responsible for all of the books leaping off the shelves around them. Luna Lovegood was similarly patchy, occasionally sending Justin Finch Fletchley's wand spinning out of his hand, at other times merely causing his hair to stand on end. I love that passage for two reasons. One, it's a really cool breakdown of where they're at magically.
Mm-hmm. And it shows their personality so much. I mean, Ernie being extra flourishing
with the wand.
Yeah, come on.
But it also shows how Harry is able to now look at other people and break down pluses, minuses, what people are doing wrong, why they're doing it wrong.
And to be fair to Harry, I mean, this is a fairly large class size. It was 28 people. That's a decent size.
I think, I don't know how this translates to specifically English, but I have done some of my own teaching in the athletic training profession. And I think when you see someone that's maybe not as proficient as you in something, you learn from that as well.
Oh, 100%.
Because you see that and you're like, oh, that's where they're making that mistake.
Yeah.
Or, oh, that's where they're going wrong.
Yeah, and then you learn, like, okay, if that's the way that they're misinterpreting something, well, now I can know that for the next student.
And how do I
fix it? Yeah.
How do I fix that? And how do I communicate better going forward? And it makes you a better teacher and a better professional in your own right.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think this first lesson, as much as the Zachariases and Lunas and Michael Corners are learning, I think Harry is equally learning just as much.
I mean, there's as much as they try to prep you in college for being a teacher, not until you get into the field and do your student teaching, it doesn't ever become a thing. And then it's like, wow, this is so much more than I thought. And this is a lot. And there's constant, but it's trial by fire, and it's the best teacher.
Is this why Hermione is so good at everything? Is because she's constantly helping Ron and Harry? Is that why she's good at like everything?
Let's go with it.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, so obviously Harry's making the rounds. Also, for the record, I made this comment about Trelawney and most of the other teachers at Hogwarts.
Yeah, they
generally go around.
That's a smart tactic.
Yeah, they go around and actually interact with students during class and try to figure out where you're at, where you're going wrong.
Are you paying attention, or are you on your cell phone?
Right.
They don't have cell phones. I don't know what the wizard equivalent would be, but
sure. Are you charming a piece of paper to fly over to the other? No, but Harry's making the rounds. And, maybe he's picked that up from his teachers at Hogwarts, seeing them do it. But he goes around and checks in on everybody. He finally makes it over to Cho and Marietta. And we get a little bit of an interesting interaction. Obviously, we get the interaction that Harry focuses on, which is Cho is nervous.
Yeah, why is she so nervous? Because he's over there.
Harry plays this very well, and I think he's coming from a leadership perspective.
I think being in a leadership role automatically gives you a little bit more confidence. Just because it forces you to.
So, I mean, he's able to respond with a little playful banter. Like, he says, oh, no, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. Okay, no, you're actually really trash. But I know you can do it because I was watching you from over there.
Yeah.
It was a very nice interaction from Harry on that point, not talking about the weather. But we also get Cho with a little bit of background on Marietta. Cho says that Marietta's mom works for the Ministry of Magic and has explicitly told her not to get in Umbridge's way, which
in itself is quite the warning. Like, if this woman knows, if she knows Umbridge and being like, don't get in her way, don't mess with her.
There's a couple of different ways you could take that. There's that way where it's like, I know Umbridge, stay away from her. There's also she works for the Ministry, I work for the Ministry.
Don't make my life difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Can you just play under the radar and we'll be good? And then Cho says she's also been told to stay away from Umbridge's bad side, but she says, I need to do this. So you get a difference in how Cho and Marietta are kind of handling this.
And she did mention Cedric, too, with part of her reasoning.
And I think that's the motivating factor between her and Marietta, is Marietta doesn't have that spark plug to get her motivated to do this, whereas Cho does have that motivation.
This is her friend being dragged. Like, oh, my friend's dragging me to this stupid DA thing.
So I guess, we can always kind of get into that discussion about how do we feel about Cho even having Marietta with her, which is probably a conversation we've gotten into it in the past, but it's probably a constant conversation that we might be having as long as this DA is going, because there's a clear and obvious friction there.
Yeah.
But
she's significantly less enthusiastic than, say, like, I don't know, Ernie or Neville or the twins.
Or even Zacharias, because at least Zacharias is there and participating and interacting. Because, I always had a teacher who mentioned that the ones who challenge aren't necessarily the bad kids.
Right.
Zacharias challenging Harry is not a bad thing necessarily. He wants to learn and make sure that what they're learning is appropriate and beneficial. There's not something inherently wrong with that. Yes, he's coming off as very abrasive, but I don't think it's wrong for Zacharias to challenge a thought. Marietta just seems to not just want to be there at all.
Right, which is a big problem.
Anyway, we'll leave it here, and we will come back after the break with the spoiler section.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
All right, so we are back with the spoiler section of Chapter 18, Dumbledore's Army. And I just wanted to start off with Zacharias and the Expelliarmus questioning of Harry. And I can't blame Zacharias for it. And I know Harry is trying to start off the lesson as well, giving them a good foundation building block to build off of. And that's the right way to do it. And that's... Harry is correct in starting simple and building from there, for sure, no doubt about it. But why I say Zacharias is understandably questioning the decision on Expelliarmus is because the Death Eaters do it later as grown adult wizards. They're like, I'm sorry, you're using what spell right now?
They're like, it's his like catchphrase almost, his giveaway is he always uses Expelliarmus.
Yeah, it later becomes his unique mark. Other than the scar on his forehead, it's like the scar on his forehead and the fact that he uses Expelliarmus in deadly situations where no other witch or wizard is happening to use that particular spell. So I get why Harry does it, but it's not like it's completely out of the realm of question for Zacharias to be like, I'm sorry, why are you using that spell in that situation? Is that really the first spell we should be doing?
It just seems too simple.
It's definitely the right move by Harry. It's okay to question in that sense too, and I think people are like, why is Zacharias Smith questioning Harry? Well, it's okay to be like, I'm sorry, why are we doing this? Time out. Like, it's okay to say that. There's no harm in doing that. It's what Hermione does to Umbridge, and everybody's fine with it. So, like, you can question why a teacher is teaching something. Hopefully you get a good, solid response back, which Harry gives. And then you're like, oh, okay, I see where we're going. That's fine. Cool.
But I do also want to point out the fact that this is the start of Harry starting to listen to his scars, and this is going to backfire very hardcore in this book. Don't always trust everything that Scar is telling you, / your dreams are telling you.
Well, the whole bit there is similarly to why Dumbledore doesn't want to be in the same place as Harry, is there's a connection, obviously, with Harry and Voldemort. So Dumbledore is seemingly aware of it now. Harry is ignorant to it, and Voldy is completely unaware altogether of it now.
Right. Once he becomes aware of it, that's where the danger.
That's a real problem.
Yeah. Don't want that to be happening. The other thing that I do, going back to the DA, Neville, his growth in this book, especially through the DA, is so fantastic. And you just love to see it. It's like his Gryffindor side we've seen bits and pieces of every now and then, like the whole bravery or whatever, but it is going to come out so strong and you just love to see it.
Yeah, it's, you get that kind of moment where Neville's not the popular kid when Harry realizes, like, oh, of course Neville is not paired up with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you and I will work together. It's fine. And I think that's the best Neville could have hoped for, because despite what everybody seems to think of Harry, he's not this arrogant showboat guy. He's a very humble, like, hey, let's work on this kind of background, kind of process, which is what Neville needs. He needs a calm presence, which I can't believe I'm saying that word with Harry Potter.
Well, especially after the escape from Azkaban with all those Death Eaters, because like your parents' torturers are now out there, and this has gone from I'm practicing for the sake of like my owls to this is life or death.
Well, Harry is not Snape. He's not McGonagall either. Both have an intimidating presence that throws off Neville. Harry comes to Neville as a more calming presence, honestly, where he feels a little bit more comfortable talking with and being with Harry. And I think that alone gets Neville in a good mindset. And then the idea that
it's like when you're comfortable, you get to be more confident, and then your true skills are coming through because you're not worried about these teachers like judging you or embarrassing you or
this isn't for a grade,
attacking you. Yeah, there's not a grade, so you don't have to worry about your grade if that gives you the anxiety too. Yeah, I think it's definitely a safe space for him, which is both Harry and probably also maybe a little bit the magic of the room. Which I also kind of want to talk about that room. We see the room requirement so much in the series, and I mean, so much obviously with the DA, but we see it later become the room of, like, I think Harry calls it like a hidden things, and that's where we know where Malfoy has been working on the vanishing cabinet, which of course backfires, which is a whole thing. I would love to go into the room when it's the room of hidden things and just organize it, because there's so much stuff in there. I think it'd be so much fun to just go through and like find all the books.
You say that, and then you get to it, and then you'd be so overwhelmed.
It just reminds me of like Indiana Jones.
You get through one bookshelf, and then you'd be like, I'm done with this.
But like, just imagine like what books have been hidden in there, and why were they hidden, and every little chest and cabinet that is holding secret stuff. It's like, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like everyone thinks like, if you were to go into a hoarder's house, like you could find some magical thing, but then of course there's the filth in there. But I don't know, it'd just be fascinating to go through and see what treasures you find and secrets and mysteries that have been forgotten from the world because it's been in this room. And then of course it also becomes like the little hideaway for the whole school when they're dealing with like everything that goes on in book 7.
It just amazes me that, Voldy refers to it later, or they think Voldy thinks of the room of requirement like this, that he alone has
discovered its secrets,
discovered all of Hogwarts' secrets.
Yeah.
He's that arrogant. And, Dumbledore is the exact opposite. He doesn't pretend to know everything there is to know about Hogwarts.
Yeah.
And it just surprises me that there hasn't been more students to figure it out. Like, you'd think Fred and George would have had a grasp on it. You think the Marauders would have had a grasp on it.
Especially since it's by, what was it, a bust or a painting of trying to teach trolls how to do ballet.
Yeah, most people probably try to avoid that. Most people also probably would just look at a blank stretch of wall at Hogwarts and be like, why is there a blank stretch of wall?
Yeah, or think that it's the door pretending to be a wall, or
why is that door sometimes there and sometimes not?
I suppose, yeah, I mean, I remember, what was it, in the first book I was talking about how some doors, I think, or maybe I think it might have been the staircases, but like some staircases go a different place on Fridays, and you have to remember that. Maybe it's just the fact that this castle seems to move so much that you just kind of forget about it, or maybe you just get so used to just going to your classes that you don't go exploring for the other unused rooms.
So do you think Filch just goes up there every so often and is like, maybe today I'll get a new cleaner. Maybe today there's another new broom.
That are like, I have to clean up more vomit from the ceilings. Please get me something that I can do, because my magic is not going to be helping me. I have none.
Isn't it interesting that it does work for him then?
Yeah. I wonder if Muggles would be able to see it.
There's a whole other question there.
Yeah. All I know is I want a room. It would give me a bed to be super, super comfy in, and a whole bunch of books, and my cat would also be there, and time could stop, and then I could just spend as long as I want in there, and it'd be great. And if there's a whole bunch of self-grading quills that could take care of all my paperwork,
clearly does
that'd be
not have
fantastic.
any effect on time because an hour went by.
Well, I wish it couldn't. But I don't know. You had also said, I don't know if taking objects out of the room if you can. And I feel like they could, right? I mean people put stuff into the room.
There has to be a limit though, otherwise it gets ridiculous.
Well, I know like they couldn't get food. That was one of the rules that Hermione said, that in the 7th year they had to like get a passway to the kitchens in order to get the food provided for them. But yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting to see what you can get from the room and then sell from the room or keep from the room or whatever.
Once again, house elves come up so big because they're aware of this room. Mm-hmm. They're aware of the mechanics of the room, how it works, the whole bit. And it's just like
this big, massive secret.
It's not really a secret.
Yeah, because they know it, but no one talks to the house elves about it.
No one ever goes to the house elves and been like, hey, is there anything about this school that I might not be aware of?
I'd love to know the Hogwarts history from the elves' perspective. Like, what do they know that we don't?
A lot. Clearly a lot.
How messy was Dumbledore's room when he was a student there?
So, another question we have is the relationship between Cho and Marietta.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've talked a little bit before about, how and or why are they friends?
Right.
Why is Cho clearly dragging Marietta to all of these? And, I think the question then becomes, with the events that ultimately unfold the way that they do.
You mean her being a snake?
Yes. Does that alter that friendship? And I guess my perspective on it is I still don't understand exactly why Cho is a friend of Marietta to begin with. Again, I don't know the social circles in the Ravenclaw common room. It's unclear to us because we get so little information on the other houses.
Yeah, that's one of the things I would definitely want to know. I'd be asking all the people, like, tell me about your common room. What's it like? This is what my common room's like.
Like, I'm sure that there are obviously more Ravenclaws than just Luna, Cho, Marietta, Michael Corner, Terry Boot, Anthony Goldstein. There are more Ravenclaws than that. So obviously there's people that she could associate with. And she's obviously a very pretty girl. She's a prominent member. She's the seeker of the Quidditch team. Mm-hmm. So she's a prominent member of the Quidditch team. Mm-hmm. You'd imagine she would have a fairly decent choice of
I think it's
people
one
you
of
click
those
with.
Situations where, like, I don't know, sometimes you have those situations where you have a friendship where you hang on to them and then you guys start to grow apart and then you're like, why was I even friends with them in the first place? They didn't really add anything to this. But then they kind of just continue to hang around and almost look up to you and try to, like, sap your energy, or in her case, maybe her popularity, just by being around her.
Do you think they grew up together?
It could be like one of those.
That their parents maybe knew each other and then they were just friends?
Yeah.
And then as you get older and as you mature, you might grow apart a little bit.
Maybe. I could see that.
But you still, like, have that like loyalty, even though you're not clicking the same.
Because you're like, I remember who you were back then, and you were always a lovely person. So the fact that you betrayed us, like,
kind of like a Lily Severus situation.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, I knew you before, and you were cool, and now we're growing up, and we're kind of splitting apart.
Yeah, I don't know, but props to Hermione's magic that sneak really does not go away. I mean, and the 6th year went on the train to school, she's like all covered up in really thick makeup and stuff. It's like, oh gosh, what a jinx.
Yeah.
Don't cross Hermione.
Don't cross Hermione. Yeah, I don't know how that relationship. We're just kind of going off of what we think might have been the source of that friendship, and what might be that friendship going forward after these books. But for the life of me, I can't, based on what we're given, I can't be like, oh yeah, that's clearly why Cho's hanging out with her.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a very fulfilling friendship.
Yeah. But anyway, you have anything else left for the spoilers?
Nope, I'm ready to see more DA action.
Yeah, I think it was a really cool scene. I spoke about in the Hog's Head how that's one of my favorite chapters, and that's the formation of the DA. So every time you see Harry becoming more and more comfortable leading.
Once again, I still think his job post-graduation should have been DA teacher, Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher.
Well, he's so comfortable in this role eventually. He gets to be comfortable in this role, and it gives him more confidence in himself, which is great.
And satisfaction that he's helping people like this. Like, he's doing good. He's good at this, and it helps.
So me thinking, like, reading these books from the perspective of Harry, I always associated with Harry, reading these. It's so awesome for me to read this and Harry becoming from the awkward, socially anxious Harry that you get at the beginning, where he feels isolated and alone, and the whole world is against him, and he's backed into a corner, and even his friends, he feels like his closest friends, he feels he can't even like be super comfortable with because they're not being honest with him. And there's a lot going against Harry here at the beginning of Order of the Phoenix, and you see him grow and develop into something better throughout this book. And it's such a fulfilling... It's a good
character development.
It's a great character development through the DA and the use of that confidence builder. Yeah. For him and for the students. So.
And then, of course, having them have his back in the Ministry of Magic is not a bad thing.
Yeah, but that's where it falls apart, because Harry's the one that put them there in an unfortunate circumstance.
I still think, though, that for Neville and Luna, as much as everything backfired and it was very, very dangerous situation, like, for them to be able to step up and be there for their friends was like a really big thing.
They should not have survived that. But we'll get there. But we will get there when we get there. And it's coming up relatively quickly. We're already about halfway through this book.
Which is crazy because it's, a month into school year?
Yeah.
That?
Yeah, about that. So
it's a long book.
It's a long book. But
I love it.
We will be back with chapter 19 next week. Please post, repost this podcast wherever you can. Help us grow and get to more listeners. We really appreciate all of the feedback and all of the comments. Participate in our conversations by leaving those comments on Spotify or on our Twitter that Elizabeth does such a great job.
And then Dan will give you a shout out.
And then I will give you the shout out on the podcast. So that does really mean a lot to us that you guys are interacting with us, and we're seeing what you guys think of Harry Potter and what you think of our thoughts of Harry Potter. And as always, there's also that support the podcast link wherever you're listening to the podcast, where you can donate financially, which also really helps us with all the work that we put into this all the time. But with that, I think we'll wrap it up for Chapter 18, Dumbledore's Army.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.